Boundless Authenticity Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Boundless Authenticity Podcast. Remember, we need you to do one thing, just hit like and share with your friends. That's all you got to do. Today, we're joined by Katie Paige, a leading researcher and investigator of UFOs, cryptids, and high strangeness phenomena in the Rocky Mountains. Katie has been a driving force in the UFO community for over a decade, serving as a STAR team investigator, MUFON Special Assignment Team member, and former Colorado MUFON State Director. She is the founder of Rocky Mountain Ranch Research, investigating historic anomalous activity at Clearview Ranch, a site with mysteries that predate even Skinwalker Ranch. Her work has been featured on Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, The Unexplained with William Shatner, and other TV programs, and she's shared her expertise on national radio and podcasts, including Coast to Coast AM. Katie is also the author of multiple books on UFO encounters and cover-ups. She co-hosts the UAP Studies podcast and produces her own podcast, The Trifecta. She brings decades of research, first-hand investigation, and a deep passion for bridging the gap between experiencers, researchers, and the public. Visit katiepaige.net. That's KatiePaige.net. So, Katie Paige, how did you get into this line of work?
Well, like so many of us that experience things that fall outside normal, whatever normal is. I as a child experienced things, and my mom started dating a gentleman that owned this ranch, very similar to the Skinwalker Ranch. And I'm 9, 10, and 11 years old at the time. And my big sister and my mom, we all experienced things on this ranch for a period of 3 years. This is where Linda Moulton Howe actually got her start as an investigative journalist, trying to, she was reporting on the rash of animal mutilations out there at the time. And so years go by, you do what you do when you have to grow up and be an adult. I got married, had a family, did all that, but those questions never left me. And so kind of started getting more interested in the paranormal realm, going on ghost hunts. I got addicted to the show Ghost Hunters, Jason and Grant and all them, watched that for years. Went on a few of their, we did the St. Augustine Lighthouse in Florida, because that was my favorite episode of Ghost Hunters, where you see that apparition and shadow look down the lighthouse. I was like, whoa. So did a couple investigations at the Stanley Hotel, but the questions of all that stuff that happened at that ranch never left me. So through watching a documentary, I learned of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. Was like, what's that? Took my test, went in as a field investigator, ended up being Colorado State Director for a while. But while I was in that position, I picked up this book right here. Have you read this book, Hunt for the Skinwalker? It's a good one. You should read it. It's about the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah before it was really widely known. It didn't have a TV show at that point. And I started reading the back of the book, and I'm like, wow, that sounds like my childhood, and at night I'm reading the book, and I get to a chapter called Other Hot Spots, and they start talking about a ranch in Colorado. And I knew the strange dynamics of the family, and this is the first time I learned anybody knew anything about the ranch at all. I never knew it was investigated. We just thought it was this family secret. And I was on the phone with my sister and my mom. I'm like, you're not going to believe this. And through this book, I learned that there were 3 PhDs that investigated the ranch. And actually on my YouTube channel, I'm reading the original briefing document right now about the ranch property. But as you can see, for the last 15 years, with these high, yeah, I know, it's funny. With all these high strangeness locations, there's so many different types of phenomena that are going on that literally, we're talking animal mutilations to the hitchhiker phenomena, to the paranormal, to UFOs, UAPs, to the cryptids, sightings, you name it. It's covered. And so there's a lot to go through, and it's kept me really busy trying to just understand what all that was about. And the biggest question for me was how much of it is Black access military projects that were going on out there at the time, and how much is actual unexplained phenomena.
What I'm getting here is that you were like, yeah, I want to do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, if only it paid something, but it doesn't. But it's certainly an interest, and of course, like anything that you do for years and years and years, I kind of ebb and flow, not only with what I believe is going on, but just my motivation to keep seeking answers. But it's inevitable that even when I want to walk away, it's like the universe pushes me back on the path. Don't give up yet.
What moment really made you decide, okay, this is the thing that I'm going to chase forever?
I think what's really driven me is I think there's hundreds, if not thousands, probably we're talking more in the thousands, unwitting families and people and children that were put into these secret programs or, Black access projects. And I think that's motivated me because it's affected my life, my sister's life. My mother passed, it's been a year and a half ago now, but it affected her life. So I think just kind of the injustice of that. Like if you're pawns in a game, then I want to find documents or some proof of that. And through the years, I've gotten some interesting MK Ultra kind of programs that I was a part of and other people were a part of as well. So we'll kind of get into that a little bit. And through some of these documents that I uncovered through Dr. Leo Sprinkle, he is a PhD out of Laramie, Wyoming, and it's only like a 3-hour drive from where I live. So as soon as I found out about his research from this book, I wrote him an old school letter. He's old school. And right before Christmas in 2013, I get a letter back from him. It was a great Christmas present saying, yes, this was the ranch. Yes, these are the people. You're welcome to come and see all the original documents. And the next weekend I'm driving, and in those documents, they talked about, in one particular instance, it said Warren and his last name was redacted out from Camp Carson, which is a military base here in Colorado Springs. There's a lot of military bases in Colorado Springs, from the Air Force Academy to Fort Carson to Butte, that has a lot of military choppers and things like that. But anyway, so it says he visits the ranch. So first question is, why is there a soldier from Camp Carson on the ranch? Okay. Secondly, it says he was behind the ranch house. So this is a very, the front part of the ranch is very like prairie, open. And the back of the ranch house has ponderosa pines. It's very forested. So you got both terrains. And he said he felt something wrong, as if something took over his mind, made him walk towards the woods, would release him, and he would run back. And this did this to him 5 times. So that's one clue that we had a soldier from Camp Carson. But this mysterious, one of the main players in all these documents, he claims his name was John Duke. He said he was with Air Defense Command from San Francisco from like the 60s. And if you study any MK Ultra kind of documents, it kind of started out there in San Francisco. And he talks in some of the, in some of these documents, he talks about taking legal LSD. I don't know about you, but there's no legal LSD unless it's kind of a Black access military project. And 1 year after Contact in the Desert, me and my partner, we stopped and interviewed an ex-CIA agent's daughter and widow who, they owned actually some of the property over Dulce Base, but he was in a project which they called FM, which stands for freaking magic. And so this John Duke character might have been involved in that program as well. So that's kind of something that's really kept my interest and keeps me going on, what really was going out there. Even these disembodied electronic sounding voices we'd hear, there's a technology called plasma ball technology. And if you go to YouTube and, listen to what that sounds like, where they pump voices out, keeps the soldier safe in battle, it sounds very similar to what I experienced and what I heard when I was a child. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned it, so I guess it's natural for me to ask you how much of it actually is military Black projects going on out there.
It's a great question. And I'll tell you, the animal mutilations is something I stayed away from for a long time, because I'm like, there's other experts handling that. I just didn't want to go down that road. But inevitably I had to, because it's still continuing to this day. And then, of course, Tony Angiola and I just wrote the book on Snippy the horse, which is a whole other episode that we could do a deep dive on. But this is really the first recognized animal mutilation that occurred in the San Luis Valley. Valley back in 1967. And there's so much of what happened out there in the San Luis Valley of Colorado that's almost identical to what was happening at the Rocky Mountain Ranch in my childhood. So doing this for almost 7 months, I was always like, oh my gosh, they had the boxes, they had the hum sounds, they had ships flying in and out of Mount Blanca, the animal mutilations. But when it came to the animal mutilations, back in the day, people would speculate there were like satanic cults, rituals being done. And I think that would be a very, very teeny tiny sliver of that, because this has been going on now for almost 60 years. And there are so many unusual cases, animals that are clearly dropped from above, that are in trees or have strange, one interview I did, I drove to Wyoming and interviewed a woman who her family lived in this town of Kiowa, Colorado. In fact, like pioneered the town. If you go to the museum, her family's all over it. They have street names named after them and things like that. Well, right out of high school, she moves to Rama, which is very close to the ranch. And her husband, they had many, many hundred acres way off the county road. Her husband's on horseback checking the cows for calves. He came across a dead calf. It had 4 cuts in a perfect square with the top of the fur removed, but the skin was still there, but the calf was dead. So he gets on his horse, goes to the house, comes back in the pickup truck with my witness. So now it's the two of them, the husband and wife. And in that time it took, and she said it was about 20 to 25 minutes by the time they got back to that calf. It had been completely mutilated, blood drained, cauterized incisions, organs removed. And what's crazy, there was nothing but where the horse was walking, no truck marks, no feet marks in the dirt. They said it was eerie. They felt like they were being watched. Freaked him out completely. And the coolest part was she actually sent me the photographs. They were like Polaroid pictures on Facebook Messenger of that particular calf with the cauterization and the blood drain and the organs gone. Then she sends me a picture they had of a calf that was also dead that was attacked by a coyote. And they just will jump up and, they're about a calf. So to answer your question, I think there's a small percentage that are done by military. I would estimate 25 to 30%, maybe a small little sliver of like ritual kind of killings. The rest are mystery. There's just so many stories. And even talking to Paul Sinclair and others in the UK that have had kangaroo mutilations, there's sea creature mutilations, dog, cat, horse, cow, you name it. So yeah, I think there's something else going on there.
That made me think of a few years ago, there was a lot of instances where you would see dogs and cats and goats and stuff. And there were no other visible markers to say that, okay, there was some kind of Satanist group or something doing something here,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think that this kind of stuff is probably all over the world, honestly.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, and it's disturbing. And then, of course, people don't like to talk about it, but there are reports of human mutilation as well. And some of the photographs I've seen, and I wish I never saw, are pretty horrific. I mean, really, really pretty scary stuff. And I've heard theories like, I think it's Linda Moulton Howe, or it might have been Chris O'Brien, and that talked about that maybe extraterrestrials absorb nutrients through the skin, so they don't ingest nutrients like we do. They rub it on their skin, and that certain blood, because we always wonder why they're draining blood, because it's high in copper. So maybe there's certain nutrients that they're absorbing through the blood, because they leave kind of the stuff we enjoy, like the filet mignon and the filet. They don't take that. They take the soft tissue, often the tongue, the eye and ear, the rectal area, and will drain the blood. So maybe that's what's happening. I don't know.
So let me ask you this question then, because there's theories that are hinged on the flesh and blood thing, and then there's theories that are hinged on interdimensional. Don't you think it's entirely possible and more than likely that there's just both kinds of ET? Like, why would there be a limit on the number and type of ET?
I agree with you completely on that. In fact, I I think so many as investigators and researchers, we want everything to be kind of nicely packed in a little box. Like, here's the one answer. But at least what I've learned through all the years I've been doing this, nothing is just as simple as it seems. Like, it's not just one answer. Multiple things go on. And then the question becomes, okay, if it's not all strictly paranormal, if it's not all military, and we do know the military's out there, which came first? The military presence and then the unexplained phenomena, or vice versa. And through my research, I found that it's most likely the phenomena came first. And of course, we always leave it up to our military to want to weaponize everything. And how can we use this to our advantage? And that certainly looks like that's what occurred at the Rocky Mountain Ranch.
So what's the most common phenomenon that you encounter?
When I was a kid, thank goodness I did not live there full time. If I did, I don't think I'd even be on the show talking about it. The two younger boys, I'll back up. Reverse. So this was the mid 70s. Okay. My mom was dating she worked as a computer operator at United Airlines, and she started dating a gentleman by the name of Jack. All the adults now in the situation have since passed away, so now I'm comfortable at least using their first names. So my mom's dating Jack, but Jack was married to a woman named Betty. Betty and Jack never, this is why, again, I think it was more military projects, because Betty and Jack never divorced. Betty was dating that John Duke character who claimed to be Air Defense Command. So for 3 years, my mom's dating this married guy. What a great role model, right? And she's dating John Duke. And that's how it was. That's why when I read it in the book and I knew it's funny because I use acronyms in the reports and stuff very close to their original names. Like John Duke was Jim and Jack was John and Betty was Barbara. Like, they barely changed the names. But anyway, so yeah, my mom's dating this guy, but they had 3 sons. The 2 younger sons lived with us during the week to go to a larger school district, because the little town of Kiowa, they had like a graduating class of like 4 or 5. It was very small. In Cherry Creek School District, they had a graduating class of like 1,000. I mean, it's a huge school. So afforded them more opportunities, right? Plus, in the reports, it said, we want the kids off the property because all this crazy stuff is going on. But the youngest boy lived there full time on the ranch. So it was kind of this, we're commuting the boys back and forth to visit their mom, things like that. But every time my sister and I would go out there, sometimes we were together, sometimes we were not, because she's a junior and senior in high school. So she's dating and doing what kids in high school do, where I'm in elementary, starting middle school. So I'm like, well, how old are you when you're 9 years old? Like 4th, 5th, 6th grade, those kind of years, or 5th, 6th, 7th grade, those years. So those 6 years were pretty significant for those years, where my sister's in high school and I'm in elementary, junior high school. So I would go to the ranch a little more often than she would, dropping the boys off to see their mom and stuff like that. And every time we'd go out, things would happen. So one particular thing that both my sister and I remember very vividly was, it was a typical Colorado spring day. So in Colorado, we get these wet, heavy snows, but the sun will be shining and it'll be like 50 degrees out, right? We don't want to be cooped up in the ranch house. So we go out and flip the Frisbee, and we look down and there's this big, large, snowless circle that's dirt, completely dry, not even wet. And there's snow all on the outside of it. And we just remembered that very clearly. Nothing was growing. My investigator brain later says, well, maybe there was a silo there, or maybe there's something there. There was never anything there. And what's really cool in these reports, there was actually 2 of these snowless circles that were investigated. The one that we recall was 75 feet in diameter. And in one of the reports, it stated in the snow outside of the circle, there were drops of blood. I'm like, what's that about? And then the other circle was behind the ranch house where I encountered the box. So I did encounter one of these mysterious boxes that just disappear. I know it sounds crazy. I didn't talk about it for years, but even the police officer had an encounter with one of these boxes. So that's one memory that I have. And what's really fascinating, I'm a co-host on UAP Studies podcast with Jason Gilmat. And we had Dr. Pearson do a 3-part series on that podcast. And he did his PhD dissertation on the UAP phenomena. And when it came to spacecraft sightings. And he had a very strict criteria because he's doing his dissertation, right, for his PhD. And so these cases that he looked at were the more credible cases. And one of his findings for disc-shaped craft was a 75-foot in diameter circle on the ground. It was reported at the Snippy site. It was reported, there's a really good series on Netflix called Investigation Alien with George Knapp. And the first one is on animal mutilations. And I believe the case was in Oregon. And this was a 5th generational rancher, same 75-foot diameter. And I love that episode. If you haven't seen it, check it out, because this is a serious rancher guy, like not a kook at all. And he's having all this, these animal mutilations and all this phenomena. Well, one time he goes out and he sees a craft. He gets a shotgun, goes out to take a shot at this thing, and it just, boom, vanishes. I'm like, wow. So, and this was not too long ago. So these animal mutilations and this activity is still going on to this day.
So that's definitely the most common phenomenon then.
Well, at the time, it was the animal mutilations for sure. The very first thing that was reported out there, though, were these strange hums and sounds underground. But just recently, I've been doing some digging on the coal mines and the aquifers underground, and there are caverns and things. And in the report, it states like the hums would get louder and you would definitely hear them late at night or early in the morning when things are quiet. But when you have these aquifers underground and the wind comes up, and it states in the reports that when it was windy, we'd hear the hums more often. Well, just like in the San Luis Valley with the great sand dunes, the dunes will sing if the wind is right and it's the right direction. It will make hums and tones. And so I'm wondering if that's what people are also hearing in like Taos, New Mexico. You often hear Taos has these mysterious hums. I think it's more of a natural phenomenon, the hums are, but that was something we definitely experienced out there. But again, I don't think that's paranormal in nature.
So what are the biggest limitations on getting conclusive data or evidence in your research?
Well, it's hard to get the truth. And that's why at the heart of me, and maybe it stems like for me, going to the archives years ago was just kind of a quiet getaway. When you're raising kids and it's a little chaotic at home. I always loved retreating to the archives, and I still love that and there's still gems to be found. For 8 years, I've been researching this Denver Roswell body connection, which we can get into later, is separate from the ranch research. But definitely any documentation you can get is helpful when you're investigating the paranormal or UFOs, UAPs, or any of this high strangeness stuff, because it's so out there that people have a hard time understanding. Or if you haven't experienced it yourself, I can understand why it's hard for people to even begin to understand it. So I think that's really important.
This is something that bothers me, quite frankly, because right now, for whatever reason, in my heart of hearts, I feel compelled to investigate as many ET stories as I can, just to hear what's going on. Everybody's screaming, we want disclosure. But I just don't think that it's going to happen like that because, and I'll say it, certain people don't want us to really know what's going on. Obviously, if there's military operations involved, they don't want you to know, right? So the sooner we can all kind of accept that and realize we need to do our own independent research and try to talk to people like you or whatever the case is, just ask questions. It's not gonna just be served to you on a plate, right?
No, there's many reasons for that too. And you're absolutely right about that. So let's say there's thousands of people, and you're right, probably around the world, that have been unwitting. I don't want to use the word victims, but they were sort of used. And we certainly know that people in state hospitals, mental institutions were, all sorts of horrific things were done to these people. And there's liability there. Okay. The government's never going to come out and go, yeah, we have all these things we don't understand, because they don't want you to think they don't have the answers, and they don't have the answers. So that's one reason. Another reason is liability issues. they don't want any of that stuff to come to the forefront, because then that's money or, accusations. And what the heck were you doing? Especially when children were involved. So that's really bad. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, there are, and then certainly the research I've done with the Denver Roswell body, it has a Mason connection to it. And you're talking about Masons and these secret societies that have some of these secrets that they don't want out. And I think one of the secrets that they don't want out is the very nature of reality itself and the power that each and every individual soul on this planet can manifest. If we all knew the power that we all hold to manifest this reality, we would live in a whole different world, and there goes control, right? So it's money and control and power like everything else. And you're right, it's going to come from each and individual person waking up to their own unique individual skills and the power to change the world, because we all have that ability to do it.
Okay, so I'm going to let you dive all the way into the Denver Roswell body connection.
Okay. So again, I've been researching this for 8 years, and I will actually, this is what I'll be talking about at Contact in the Desert this year, as well as the MUFON Symposium. So this will be the first time that I'm bringing my research forward with all of this. But the rumor started with a General Brigadier Arthur Exon. And Brigadier Arthur Exon said, was rumored that one of the Roswell bodies ended up in a mortuary outfit in Denver. And so when I was on what they call the special assignment team with MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, at the time, I think I was assistant state director. But anyway, a case came across to me from a family in California, and they were reporting about a mortician by the name of Lou Roberts. And he wrote a little book. It's actually there at the museum, at the Roswell Museum. And I went to New Mexico to interview this gentleman twice before he passed away. But long story short, in a basement in Ollinger's mortuary outfit in Denver, there was a vault stored where they have the chairs for a very long time. And he never thought there was a body in it because it had been there year after year after year. And so finally he gets curious about it. And basically Ollinger said, don't mind that. And so he goes into the files and he sees that there was a federal judge who had a hold on this body. Okay. So I went to the archives and did some research on the federal judge, who ended up being a 33rd degree Mason, right down the street from the Eisenhower. So Eisenhower's connected into this as well as Nixon. Well, this little booklet that Lou writes, he pulls what he called his caper. So his wife goes and visits her family in Nebraska, and curiosity gets the cat. So he opens the vault, and it turns out it was a hermetically sealed vault within a vault within a vault. Again, he didn't think anything was in there, certainly not a body. He opens this vault up, and to his surprise, it's a child-sized coffin. He did not, because my first question was, well, if you thought it was one of the Roswell bodies, why didn't he take pictures and all this? Well, first of all, his eyes were running. He was mortified. There was a child in there. It was covered in 7 layers of formaldehyde cloth. All the visceral had been removed. So it was basically an empty little shell. Said it was orifices for ears, heavy brow, very thick, like leathery type of skin. Genitals were completely removed and cut out, which shocked him. He didn't think alien at the time. He thought severely hydrocephalic child. Okay, that's what he was thinking. He was like mortified. And you could see when we interviewed him with cameras and everything, he was having like PTSD from this experience. So he, and the other weird thing Lou reports that what really shocked him was the condition of the little coffin he was in, because normally there's like silk lining and pillows, and this is a child, right? So you would think this child would have been laid to rest. No, it was void. It was steel. It was just void, formaldehyde. So this shocked him. And he puts everything back together, puts it against the wall, and it sat there for many more years. So through my research, I went to the probate office to try and find, the paperwork from the judge's hold. But what I found out about the judge who was appointed by Nixon, he was a federal judge. He was a crash retrieval specialist, and he was the infectious disease specialist. I just did an interview, with Don Schmidt. So he's been encouraging me to continue this research for all these years, because absolutely there's a Denver connection. Lowry Fitzsimmons were the ones guarding the body at Roswell. He knows there's a Mason connection with Eisenhower. So the judge that had the hold on the body was at the same lodge that Eisenhower would frequent down the street from Mamie Eisenhower. So there's that. And then I find out that Olinger's, because I'm like, how is Olinger's mortuary? Well, Olinger's is the one that did all the autopsies and stuff for Fitzsimmons, Lowry, which it's all within a 4-mile radius, the lodge, the Fitzsimmons, Lowry, and the Olinger's. So they are connected with Fitzsimmons, Lowry. So I feel like all the visceral and the organs that they were probably studying went to Fitzsimmons, Lowry. The little body stayed there. And I actually think I know where they put the body. When it was moved finally, what happened was, President Eisenhower, they lost a son at age 3. It was tragic, and he was buried in a cemetery here in Denver, Fairmont Cemetery, where the judge is buried as well. And when they moved little Dowd out, they put in the other body. So that's where I think that little body's laid to rest. And there's disclosure if we can get them to, hey, here's the little Roswell body right here. That's how we'll get disclosure. We're not going to hear it from the government.
So neither Eisenhower nor Nixon had a good role in any of this.
I think they did have a big role in it. I mean, Eisenhower for sure, and even Nixon with Jackie Gleason in that and his ET encounter. And I feel like if the rumor is true that Eisenhower did meet with extraterrestrials, that he might have had, that's why he didn't want to destroy the body. He laid it to rest where he thought it was safe. You know what I'm saying? So I do think he had a connection to that.
So what do you really think about that whole Eisenhower met with aliens thing? I
think it could have happened, especially knowing what we know now with all this Denver connection. And, he was head of the Army at the time. So we all know, Lowry Fitzsimmons, Lowry was the Army Air Base, and, Eisenhower's the general at the time. And then, right around that same period of Roswell, it turns into the Air Force. So it's interesting, all these players, and it was a small group of people. And, when I talked to Don Schmidt about it and interviewed him, it's like when you're in the military, you pledge an oath to country, right? When you are a Mason, you pledge an oath to your brothers and to God. So and Don's like, well, they got you in 3 ways there. They got you at the lodge, they got you with God, and they got you with, pledging an oath to your nation. So those secrets, only a handful of people knew to begin with. Do you want to hear something crazy? So a lot of experiencers have synchronicities beyond synchronicities, right? That are just like mind blowing. So here's one for you. So years ago, I'm researching Roswell Denver body connection. My mother at the time is living at an assisted living apartment place, and she wanted me to come do a talk for the residents. So I put together UFOs 101, and I'm doing my little, and after I'm talking to the residents about the Roswell body and about the judge, and one of the lady goes, "Sherm, his widow's on the 5th floor. You want me to go get her?" So I did 2 interviews with the judge's widow. I happened to be living in the same building as my mother. So I have her testimony saying that her and her husband, the judge that had a hold on that body, was at the removal of Dowd. Why would they be there? Unless they were putting that other body in there. So I have that testimony from her that they were there. Yeah. So I can't wait to put all this out for the public, because it's just one mind-blowing thing after another. All these connections. And I learned, so I was trying to figure out how the Olingers, not only were they the mortuary for Fitzsimmons Lowry, But Grover Olinger was the head Grand Master of the Mason Lodge in 1946, the year before Roswell. So there. There's all these connections.
Things are not looking good for the Freemasons here.
No. And you know what? How cool. So Tim Hogan's a really cool dude, right? He's like the Grand Master for Colorado for the Knights Templar. And I got to meet him. And he lives here in Colorado. And I'm texting him. I'm like, can you verify these people for me from this lodge? And yes, he's going to. But there's a rumor. Now, I don't know if it's true or not, but I was on a recent podcast and I was talking to the host, just like I'm talking to you about this whole thing. And he's like, you're not going to believe this, but my father that raised me, he passed away when he was 7 years old, but his name was Ace. He was part of that same Mason Lodge. And right, I'm like, what? And he claims when he was a little boy, his dad took him to the lodge and he had to put on this little silver suit. And I'm like, wait, what? So if there's a chance that the Mason Lodge in Denver has that little suit from the little Roswell alien, I'm like, can we, Hogan, knock, 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 can we find it? Can we have it done? I mean, there's secrets that people still have that could blow this thing wide open. And I hope that somehow, some way, that's how we get disclosure. Wouldn't that be cool? Let's not wait for the government.
No, we can't do that.
No, they've been keeping secrets forever. Why would they be truthful now? It's just silly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's move on to MK Ultra. Tell me about the involvement with that.
Yeah, the MK Ultra stuff is interesting. And again, my speculation goes to this strange John Duke character. So he's one of two things. He's either in the military, part of these programs. Now, the question then becomes, was he a willing participant or an unwitting participant in it? Because he talks about legal LSD. He talks, it's very cryptid in some of these reports. He talks about having like vagrants come visit the ranch. Why would you do that? What are you doing to these people? He talks about taking the legal LSD. He talks about the Warren guy coming to Camp Carson. And then there was another document. I don't know. It's just that talk. I can't remember what it was at the time. But my big question was, so here's something crazy. So these are two of the original drawings that were in the ranch archives. This is a supposed extraterrestrial that they saw, which I went on the Paul Giamatti show, Chinwag, and Paul Giamatti labeled them or named them the Tubi guys. So I call him Tubi guy. So this is a picture of Tubi guy that was reported out there. I don't know if he was tripping on LSD or if he actually saw Tubi guy. And this was a sketch of the Sasquatch that was seen out there at the Rocky Mountain Ranch, which my mother called a white fuzzy because they were like white or gray haired. But what's crazy, another synchronistic moment in my life, at the time with Colorado MUFON, I was the guest coordinator for their guest speakers. And I invited a guy out who wrote a book called Flashbacks by the name of Sean Bartok. I think his book's right down here. Yeah, it's right down here in this drawer. So I invite this guy, wrote this book. And I'm just sitting there in the third row. And in the book, he states that his ranch was in Castle Rock, Colorado. Turns out, though, it was 14 miles away from the ranch of my childhood, right? And I'm watching his presentation, and up comes, I was like, what? Comes this drawing of this guy, okay? And he said these tubes come out. Now, look at the eyes, look at the wrinkles, right? They're very similar. Then his second drawing is this. He said they see this in the tree. See how the tubes are out? Okay. Like this guy. We're 14 miles apart. This was reported in 1970. This is 75 to 78. They didn't know each other. So was John Duke having an LSD hallucination? This tells me no. This tells me somebody else 14 miles away experienced the same dang thing. Unless, of course, we're going to go way conspiracy theory and say, well, they have some sort of like projection. the military's projecting these things out there and scaring people. But that seems a little nuts to me. Like, I don't think they're doing that. So what is this? I don't know. There were two types of ETs that were supposedly out there on the ranch. These guys, these Tubi guys, and the blonde, blue-eyed Nordics. And in the reports, it said they were in conflict with one another. So part of my theory has been, are there ETs out there in the universe that are watching humanity? And these Tubi guys seem like very electronic, maybe AI types. And we've heard that with the Greys, right? Gray aliens kind of being robotic. And then some are not, like the Nordics are not. So are they watching humanity to see where we go with AI, to see where we go with Neuralink and things like this? Maybe there's some, ETs out there that are watching to see what we do, or maybe they might intervene if we go down the wrong path. I don't know. I kind of hope they do, but maybe they won't. Maybe they don't care. I don't
Very
know.
interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
When it comes down to all of the secret space program stories that you hear, I mean, anything is possible. The sky is the limit.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, there's certain things like that. Like, I have a hard time believing like in the secret space program or super soldiers or things like that. It's just hard for me to believe that. I don't know. Maybe there is, but it's a stretch for me. Like I want more proof of that. But maybe it's true. I don't know. I mean, that's one thing you get doing this for so long is your mind has to be somewhat open.
Yeah, you have to both be skeptical and you have to be open to it, right? I mean, somewhere in 100%. Between there is critical thinking, right?
100%. Yeah.
I would like to think that critical thinking, the majority of it is actually solution focused. When it comes to that kind of stuff, I mean, you have these movies like The Matrix and stuff, and then you wonder to yourself, okay, so what if we're all just actually in pods somewhere dreaming this? Like what would actually be the point in putting 99% of the science fiction stuff out there in the first place?
Yeah.
It's not sheer creativity and wanting to show you there's something going on. So how do you even see the field developing in the next 100 years? Or do you think people are still going to be spinning top in mud, trying to connect the dots on the same things that you've been working through forever? Or do you think that it'll actually resolve and maybe, we might have a clear answer to secret space program and all that, all the more bizarre stuff?
No, I don't. 100 years from now, it's hard to predict what this world's going to be like in 100 years. But I would even say in 20, 25 years, things are going to look much different and we are going to have answers. I don't think it's going to come from the government or disclosure like people hope it will. I think it's coming from AI, because I'll tell you something, AI, this whole wall is books and magazines and things. And I have to tell you, early on, I was humbled really fast because I would think I'd have this great new clue about something. Oh, crystals and vibrations and tones and light and this. And then I'll go pull the magazines like from the 60s and go, oh, they were talking about that then. Like, this is nothing new. But what we have now at our disposal to have ChatGPT and Grok and these supercomputers that I could just take a scan of my documents, put them all in there and go, find what's important. And it'll go, blah, 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 blah. Look at this, look at that, look at that. Especially with the Roswell body stuff. Things that would have taken me years to do, to just weed through it and take notes. I don't have to do that anymore. And it finds it for me. And I think that that's going to speed up this process so much faster. Plus you add you and I talking to people all around the world, like things that I thought were isolated in this little ranch in Colorado. Now, oh, that happened to you in the UK. You have boxes too. What is that? So now we're talking to each other. And we're talking about, like, are we in a video game? Are we in a matrix? I'll tell you what, it certainly would answer a heck of a lot. The Mandela effect or these crazy synchronicities. If we are in a virtual reality that answers all these questions. One question I had early on too was like, why does a phenomenon affect people differently, even with me and my sister, and we're sisters. I had the hitchhiker stuff way more than she did. And I'm like, why is that? And I have some theories on why that might be. But things like that are just going to change the game. So I do think we're going to have answers, just the basis of reality. And naturally, that'll answer ET and cryptids and all the other stuff. Ghosts.
Just to piss a couple of people off, how valid do you think channeling is in the ET disclosure process?
Nobody's ever asked me that question before. And I would put that in the same box, because if you believe that people can channel and people can call them in and communicate, with their minds, just like with remote viewing, and then you put psychics in there as well, the Long Island Medium or the Tyler Henry, and that I guess for me, I've come a long way in the belief that people can do that. I certainly believe in Tyler Henry's gifts. I certainly believe that the Long Island Medium has gifts. And I know other people that I've even had certain things that have freaked me out, going, whoa, how did that come to me? And I think we all have. And again, I think it's one of those gifts that all people have. We just need to relearn how to awaken it. And I think it's been shut down intentionally for power and control. It's one of those gifts that needs to be rewoken. So yes, I believe people can channel. That being said, just like with hypnosis, and Dr. Leo Sprinkle put me under for an hour and a half. And at the end of the day, I'm glad I did it, because I wanted to experience what that was like, especially from a professional like Dr. Sprinkle. But when I listened back to the tape, I still don't know what to make of it. Like, I don't know if that's just my imagination or if something happened, or I still doubt it and I still question it. So I don't really share it, because I don't even know what to think of it. I can't process it. So part of me thinks that yes, some people can claim to channel and then their imagination just spins it. That's human nature to do that. We have great imaginations. That's what makes us so special. But maybe we are channeling. Maybe, you think about people who have these great ideas throughout history of inventions and things, and you'll have somebody think of it in one country and somebody in another country. Where does that come from? It's like they're pulling it from somewhere. So I kind of think of, the ethers as like this big network of, and if we're able to pull information from that, why not? It's just all energy.
Fair enough. That's a great answer.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to talk to you for at least another 2 hours, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let you get back to your life. So tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at Katie, Katie Paige, PAIGE.net, or RockyMountainRanchResearch.org. And you can also find my YouTube channel at Rocky Mountain Ranch Research YouTube. And like I said, I'm going through a whole new series right now where we're going through all the documents. I'm just reading the documents and giving my opinions and my thoughts as I go. So it's going to turn out to be, because there's like a huge stack, could be like a whole year of doing these things, but hopefully people find it interesting. So be sure to check that out. And I thank you so much for having me on.
All right. Thanks for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Boundless Authenticity Podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness.
At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, every 3 months.
Basically, when you dream, you tap into your subconscious. It is your nocturnal intuition, your creativity and imagination unchained from conscious reason, ego and logic.
They're biologically alive, but they have no soul. They have AI consciousness. They can alter your conscious of the brain to get in the brain.
We live in a multidimensional reality, whether it comes through esoteric information in the spiritual realms, or the UFO people, experiencers, or mainstream through quantum physics and through mainstream science now realizing that parallel dimensions probably exist.
We're all spiritual beings. We're all having these human experiences. We've heard that phrase over and over and over. But what does that really mean? All the big questions questions of life. We have these answers inside of our souls.
We're ultimately studying the nature of what it is to be human, good and evil, our psychology, how we think, our health. That's why I love Bruce Lee's great quote, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge.
The Boundless Authenticity Podcast.